Are you really wanting to grow in an area? Yep. Your confidence is knocked and you feel like you've got imposter syndrome. You don't believe you're worthy of being there. Well, I've certainly been there so many times before. So today we're going to talk about dealing with imposter syndrome so you can move further faster. And if you stay until the end, I have an extra point for you then as well. I've experienced imposter syndrome in a personal and professional capacity. Some examples in my career early on, particularly in my early 20s, mid 20s, I would be saying things like, "Oh, I better not speak in this meeting. Who am I to be in this with all these senior professionals?" It's just like a bunch. Like now I look at it, it's so ridiculous. It's just like a bunch of other human beings who had just got like a couple of promotions in the council. And that's no disrespect, but it's like now I interview people who are like 8, 9 figure entrepreneurs, and I just, feel like they're another human being. We have a conversation. Yeah, there was a point where I'd be like phased by talking to someone who was a few positions higher than me when I was a graduate in a workplace. Like I've had you could have conversations with directors, CEOs. Now I can have those conversations very comfortably. In business, it was like when I started off coaching, it's like, oh my God, who am I to be charging? How dare I take their money? Who do you think you are? That's the kind of self-talk I was having, right? And admittedly, I've had that on many dates through my life as well. Like maybe met a beautiful girl on a night out or whatever, and then go on a date. And I'm like, who are you to be on a date with her? Like, she's way too good for you. Like, that is a very common voice I had in my head, right? So I've certainly experienced my fair share of imposter syndrome in a personal and professional capacity. Now, let's talk about this a little bit, like what it is, where it's coming from what I've learned, from what I studied, from what I found in my own experience. It's often a safety mechanism because we're new to something and our brain's perceiving it as a fear or a danger, and therefore it gets fearful. And what our brain's trying to do is keep us alive. It's trying to keep us safe. And when something's unfamiliar, it will ring alarm bells like that. And therefore, that negative bias in your brain really gets activated. And two of the deepest human fears are the fear that we're not enough and the fear that we're not lovable. Right? Maybe you can feel that deep down. I certainly have experienced them. And they're things that have been triggered now and then, right? And I've had to work through. And particularly, admittedly, those things get triggered the most in dating and relationships like that, in intimate relationships. And from all my mentors and studying that, that's where they can really get triggered. They could also get triggered in things like your work and your business and things like that as well. So imposter syndrome is tricky because it can really hold us back. Now, the thing I've realized is when the fear shows up, that's okay. It's how I work through it, my relationship to it, that really, really counts moving forward. Now, I want to ask you this. How is it impacting you by just getting stuck in the imposter syndrome? Maybe the fear of like, who are you to be doing this? You're not enough. These kind of self-talk, because I've had that in my head as well. And you don't do something. I held myself back from progressing my career so many times. Like I held myself back from getting on calls with people in like business. That's not very good. Right. I've like sabotaged myself on dates and things like that because I thought I wasn't good enough. Right. Ask yourself, how is it, going to impact you if you don't address it and you keep stuck and listening to that voice, that imposter syndrome that's holding you back? So to help you, I really want to give a few points that really help me. Okay. So the first one is for 5 minutes, like if there's a particular thing where you've got imposter syndrome, this is really effective. Do this for a week, 5 minutes a day. Write all the reasons why you are amazing and more than good enough for the thing you're talking about. So if it's like a job, why are you amazing? Why are you good enough? Ask yourself, like, okay, you went through this, you went through that, all these kind of things, right? And it may be tricky at first, but really, really consciously make the effort, because then your brain starts finding the smallest things when you search for it. Maybe if you're like, oh, I don't feel like good enough for this person, just keep writing down why you're such a catch, why you're amazing, right? Okay. And the next one is then start looking at times when you did have this imposter syndrome, when you felt like you weren't good enough, and whether you were forced to or not, you overcame it. So, for example, sometimes in our career, we have to jump into things where we're very uncomfortable, but we've overcome it. But when we don't have to, we don't push ourselves. So that's what I found with inside myself. So look at things that you have actually overcome, because then that reinforces that you are more than good enough at overcoming this challenge, right? And then the third one, just start small and celebrate. So when you do something, when you feel like an imposter, maybe it's new to you, just start small and then overcome those small challenges. Take small steps and celebrate as you do so. Okay, so I've got a extra point for you, which I think is going to be really useful. Just before I get onto that, though, I wanted to mention that if you have a specific subject you'd like to know more about, a topic, a question, just go into the Q&A from this episode and then vote or ask for a specific subject that relates to self-esteem, confidence, mindset, and I will do my best to put it in a future episode. Feedback really helps, so I can give you more of what you want. Okay, so my final point I really want to share with you today is listen to someone in an area, in like an area you're stuck with, who is really, really confident, really charismatic. I found that read from them, read a book by them. I found that, so we have mindset, and the mindset is our attitude towards something, which is great. You need that to begin anything. Our psychology, the ongoing thought processes, consciously and unconsciously. Now, our thoughts are just words and pictures. So if you're constantly listening, I like to keep things super simple, and this is what I learned from my mentor, one of my mentors, is if you're constantly listening to words from someone charismatic, confident, you're listening to them in your head again and again, that's going to rub off on you. So if you're already stuck on an area, say it's public speaking and you're like terrified, if you listen to someone like Les Brown, who's like the #1 motivational speaker in the world, who's actually, I'm very fortunate that I work for one of his business partners, and he's part of our institute. But like listening to someone like Les Brown, who's the #1 motivational speaker in the world, is probably going to build more character in you if you keep listening to him again and again. When I kept listening to Tony Robbins constantly, it started rubbing off on me. I didn't think I was Tony Robbins, but I had similar beliefs. I had more confidence. I had more charisma. So if you really want to build it, just keep listening to someone, even if it's 5 minutes a day, who really gives you that confidence within inside yourself. So that's what I've got for you today. I appreciate you for being here. You're improving other people's lives by being the best you. And remember, you are in control of your own self-esteem and confidence.